Every 3 years, the Federal Reserve knocks on the doors of thousands of American homes and asks a list of questions about money. One of them is simple enough for a child to answer. Do you owe anything to anyone? In 2 houses on the same street in Toledo in the same year, the answer was identical: no. The first house belongs to Alvin, 68 years old, 42 of them spent inside industrial compressors. He paid off his mortgage at 66. His mailbox has been empty for 2 years. Grocery flyers, dentist ads, nothing with value inside. The second house sits 3 blocks down. That mailbox is empty too. No bills, no payments, no envelopes. With that little plastic window everyone learns to recognize from across the yard, 2 identical mailboxes. Same answer to the same government in the same year. Alvin has $396,500. The other person has $10,400. $386,000 of distance between 2 people who answered the same question with the same word. At 4% a year, that gap is worth $1,287 a month, every month, for the rest of both their lives. The form is not wrong. The question is, in a few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact percentage of American retirees who owe absolutely nothing. The Federal Reserve number, straight from the source, not the one that circulates in headlines. It is much larger than you think. And when you see where it comes from, you'll understand why it was never able to measure anybody. And if you paid everything off, looked at your empty mailbox, and waited to feel like you had arrived, and what came instead was silence, you are not being ungrateful, you are not being paranoid. Something in you noticed, without being able to explain it, that you spent 30 years proudly answering a question that was never about you. And continuing to measure the wrong thing has a price. I'm going to show you that calculation. Done in months, not in dollars. That's how it should have been done from the beginning. And keep Alvin in your head. He has a $14,000 decision waiting for him in the garage, and an empty mailbox is not going to help with any of it. 30 years answering that question with pride. That is not naivety on your part. That is design. Here is what almost nobody explains about how we ended up measuring retirement this way. Debt is the only thing in personal finance that a form can actually capture. It has a date, it has a creditor, it has a balance, and most importantly, it goes to zero. You can point at it, you can circle it, you can put it on a calendar. Sufficiency has none of those things. Sufficiency depends on how much you spend, which changes. It depends on how long you live, which nobody knows. It depends on which medication you'll need at 78, which hasn't happened yet. No form in the world can measure that. So the country measured what was measurable and then made the mistake of treating it like it was the thing that mattered. Convenience won. Usefulness never entered the room. And once a country picks a measurement, the celebration gets built around it. Think about how many times you have seen someone burn a mortgage statement on television. Think about the envelope system, the debt snowball, the radio segments where people call in to scream that they are free. Every one of those is built on a number that goes to zero, because a number that goes to zero gives you a moment. Sufficiency never gives you a moment. There's no morning you wake up and announce that you have enough. So we celebrated the exit and never counted the inventory. I have spent years following real retirements, not spreadsheets, not projections, actual people in actual houses with actual roofs that needed replacing, and the pattern shows up over and over again in the same shape. The person is calm about the thing that's measured and quietly uneasy about the thing that isn't, and they can't name why because nobody gave them the vocabulary for it. Think about what a mailbox actually does. A mailbox measures one thing and one thing only: what stopped arriving. It was never built to measure what still comes in. It has no opinion about your savings. It doesn't know what your house is worth. It cannot tell you how many months you have left before something breaks that you can't cover. You looked at the right instrument for the right reason your entire adult life, and it never had any way to answer you, which brings us to the number itself. Because before we talk about what the question misses, you deserve to know exactly how many Americans give the same answer Alvin gave. The survey I mentioned is real, and it has a name. It's called the Survey of Consumer Finances. The Federal Reserve runs it every 3 years, and it is the closest thing this country has to a photograph of what American households actually own and owe. And here's the part that matters. It is not one question. It's a set of separate categories: mortgage, credit cards, auto loans, installment debt, Student loans, which show up more often in this age group than people expect. A household only lands in the group that owes nothing when every single one of those comes back at zero. So Alvin didn't answer a question. He walked past 5 separate doors and had nothing behind any of them. And that matters more than it sounds, because most people who think they owe nothing are wrong about at least one of those doors. A card with a balance that rolls over some months and not others counts. A store financing plan on a refrigerator counts. A loan taken against a life insurance policy counts. The group we're about to talk about is smaller and cleaner than the group that would raise their hand at a dinner table. Now, the term researchers use for this is debt incidence. It's worth learning because it's not what you think. Debt incidence is not how much people owe, it's how many people owe. The Federal Reserve publishes both numbers separately. Almost everyone quotes the first one and ignores the second. Here's the second one. Among American households headed by someone between 65 and 74, 35.2% owe absolutely nothing. Above 75, it's 46.6%. Sit with that for a second. That is not rare. That is not a small club. That is 1 in every 3 households in that age range, and closer to 1 in 2 once you get past 75. Now, compare it to the group right below. Among households between 55 and 64, only 22.8% owe nothing at all, which tells you something. The whole conversation gets backwards. Owing nothing is not what qualifies you to retire. It's what tends to happen after you retire. The mortgage runs out, the cars get older and stay, the kids finish school and stop needing cosigners. The zero arrives on its own schedule, and it arrives for most people eventually, whether or not they planned for it, whether or not they were disciplined about it. So if you were feeling like you joined something exclusive, you didn't. You joined a third of the country, and the older you get, the more crowded it gets. And now that you know where the number comes from, look at what it doesn't contain. 5 doors. Mortgage, credit card, auto, installment, student. Not one question about what exists inside the house. Not one line about savings or income or what happens when the furnace dies in February. The survey measures the exits. It never measured the inventory, which means the person 3 blocks down from Alvin walked past those exact same 5 doors. Same result, same word. And that is where this whole thing falls apart. Because that third of the country is not one group, it's 2, and they have nothing in common. Let me tell you a little more about Alvin, because the numbers only land once you know the man. He still wakes up before 6. Not because he has anywhere to be. 42 years of fixing industrial compressors teaches a body to get up before the alarm, and the body doesn't unlearn it because you stop going. Every morning he puts a coat on over his pajamas, steps into unlaced boots, and walks down to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. 12 steps. He's counted. He has made those 12 steps every day since he retired. And here's something Alvin has never told anyone. On the day he made the final mortgage payment, he sat in his car in the bank parking lot for about 10 minutes, waiting. He expected to feel something. Relief, maybe, some kind of click. Nothing came. It was a Tuesday. He drove home and heated up soup. 42 years of compressors, and the finish line turned out to be an ordinary Tuesday with canned soup. He told himself it would land later, that these things take a few days to catch up with a person. It never landed. And somewhere in the 2 years since, the not landing turned into a low hum he doesn't talk about, the kind that shows up around 4 in the morning and leaves by breakfast. Here's where he stands. The house in Toledo is worth around $165,000 free and clear. He has $71,000 in an individual retirement account and $2,100 a month from Social Security. By the ruler he used his entire life, Alvin passed top marks, which brings us to the piece of paper. There's an estimate sitting on the workbench in his garage. $14,200. Full roof, tear off, new gutters. He got 2 more estimates and both came in higher, so the price is fair. Alvin has the money. That's the problem. He spent 4 decades learning exactly what happens to something you postpone. It doesn't sit still and wait for you. It gets worse quietly until it fails on a Sunday night. He has never postponed a repair in his life, and that estimate has been on the bench for 11 days. On the 3rd morning, standing in the garage with a cup of coffee going cold, Alvin did a calculation nobody ever taught him. It wasn't in dollars. And the answer scared him enough that he hasn't mentioned it to his wife. I'll give you his number. Not yet. If you're finding this useful, subscribe. YouTube's algorithm won't keep showing you these videos without it. I don't sell courses. I don't have affiliate links. The deal is simple. You watch. I make more of these. Now, the hardest part of this video. Why that third of the country splits down the middle. You probably think the problem is that the question is too simple. It isn't. The problem is that the question is perfectly answerable. Two people separated by $386,000 can answer it with the same word, and neither one of them is lying, exaggerating, or misunderstanding anything. Both answers are correct. That's what makes it dangerous. Here's the data that proves it, and it comes from the same Federal Reserve survey. Among American renters aged 65 and older, the median balance on credit cards and installment debt is zero. Zero. Not low. Not manageable. Zero. The typical older renter in this country owes nothing on a credit card and nothing on an installment loan. They have no mortgage because they don't own a house. No auto loan, in many cases, because there's no car. 5 doors, all of them showing nothing. The median net worth of that household is $10,400. Now the other side. Among American homeowners over 65, more than half carry no mortgage and no balance in any of the major debt categories either. Same 5 doors. Same nothing. The median net worth of that household is $396,500. 38 times. Same survey. Same question. Same answer. 38 times the resources. There's a term for the first household that almost never makes it into retirement advice. Asset poor and debt free. No debt and no assets. It describes an entire population of Americans that no debt measurement can see because every debt measurement stamps them approved. They pass. They pass with the exact same score as a household with nearly $400,000 behind it. Think about what that does to the mailbox. The mailbox 3 blocks down from Alvin is empty for the opposite reason his is empty. His emptied out because he paid everything off. Hers emptied out because nobody will lend her anything anymore. No credit line. No card offers. No financing. The bills stopped coming because the access stopped first. One mailbox is empty from achievement. The other is empty from exclusion. And that second emptiness happens quietly, over years, without a single letter announcing it. A card gets closed for inactivity and doesn't get replaced. An application comes back, declined, and doesn't get tried again. A car finally dies and doesn't get replaced with a financed one because the payment wouldn't fit inside a Social Security check. Nothing dramatic ever happens. The doors just stop opening, one at a time, until there's nothing left to owe on because there's nothing left that anyone will let you buy. And from the street, from the mail carrier's truck, from the federal survey, from every piece of retirement advice ever written about getting out of debt, they are the same mailbox. Now, I want to be careful here because there's a version of this that turns into a lecture about renting, and that's not what this is. Plenty of people rent by choice and do beautifully. Some of them are reading their statements right now with more security than a homeowner 3 doors down. The house isn't the point. The house is just the most common place Americans happen to store the difference. The point is, the measurement. We built a national scoreboard that gives an identical score to a household with $400,000 and a household with $10,000. And then we told everyone the scoreboard was the goal. Not a checkpoint, not one input among several. The goal. The finish line, painted across a road, in a spot chosen by whoever happened to be holding the paint. And here's the part that should bother you. If the scoreboard can't tell those two households apart, then it also can't tell you which one you are. Not with confidence. Not without a second number that nobody handed you. Which raises the question Alvin was actually standing in his garage trying to answer, not how much he owed. He owed nothing, and he knew it. What he needed to know was different, and there's a reason almost no financial advisor will bring it up on their own. Here's the layer underneath. For the typical American retiree who owes nothing, almost everything they own is inside the house they live in. That's not a criticism. It's how the math works out for most people. Decades of payments went into one asset, and that asset went up, but wealth you live inside doesn't pay for a roof, it doesn't pay for medication, it doesn't cover the dentist or the furnace or 3 months in a rehab facility after a fall. Not unless it comes out. And it only comes out one of 2 ways. You sell it or you borrow against it. Both of those mean leaving or re-entering the exact situation you spent 30 years escaping. Look at what the numbers say. The median net worth of American households between 65 and 74 is $409,900. That number gets quoted constantly, and it sounds reassuring. Now take the house out of it. Strip primary residence equity from the national picture, and the overall American median drops from $192,900 to roughly $57,900. Read that one more time. The paid-off house is not the proof that it worked. The paid-off house is where the money got locked, and the lock is real. Selling means finding somewhere else to live in a market where the somewhere else costs what your house is worth. Borrowing against it means putting a payment back onto a fixed income at an age when lenders look at that fixed income and get nervous. Neither door is closed, both doors are heavy, and both of them cost you something on the way through. And here's why you've never been walked through this. Being debt-free is the only retirement milestone the advice industry can celebrate without managing anything. It costs nothing to congratulate you. It's a headline, a milestone post, a segment on morning television. Everybody wins and nobody has to do any work. The measurement that replaces it requires ongoing attention. It changes when your spending changes, when your health changes, when prices change. Nobody provides ongoing attention for free. So you heard about the first one 1,000 times, and about the second one, never. So let me give it to you now. The number Alvin was working out in his garage has a name: liquid coverage. Here's what it means. Liquid coverage is how many months of your real spending, your spendable assets, can cover without you having to sell the place you live in. Spendable assets, retirement accounts, savings, brokerage. Not the house, not the car you drive. Real monthly spending from your actual last 12 months. Not the number you'd estimate if somebody asked you at a party. Divide one by the other and you get a number of months. Months, not dollars. That's the whole shift, and it's the reason it works. Dollars are abstract at this stage of life. $70,000 feels like a lot, or a little, depending on what mood you're in and what you read that morning. Months don't do that. Months tell you exactly how long the ground holds, if the income stops, if the market drops, if the diagnosis comes. Under 12 months, you are not free. You are exposed with a clean mailbox. Debt at zero is a dot on a map. It tells you where you are and nothing else. Liquid coverage tells you whether you have the fuel to get anywhere from there. Alvin ran that division standing at his workbench with the estimate in front of him. Here's what came back: $71,000 in spendable assets, $3,400 a month in real spending, which he pulled off 12 months of bank statements rather than guessing. 20.8 months? Alvin thought he owned an entire house. What he had was 20 months. Now the other mailbox. The person 3 blocks down who gave the identical answer to the identical federal survey in the identical year has 3.1 months, 20.8 months, and 3.1 months. Same street, same question, same word. Neither one of them owes a single cent to anybody, and one of them is roughly 7 times further from the edge than the other. That's the gap the form couldn't see. Alvin replaced the roof. 20.8 months became 16.7. That wasn't a mistake. A roof that fails on a Sunday night in February costs more than $14,200, and Alvin knew that better than anyone alive. 4 decades of watching machines fail on the worst possible day taught him that much. What changed was that it was the first financial decision of his retirement he made while actually knowing the price. Not the price in dollars, he always knew that part. He'd known it for 11 days, sitting right there on the bench in his own handwriting. The price in months. That's the number he'd never once been shown, at any point, by anyone. And if that survey came back to his door tomorrow, his answer would be exactly what it was before: nothing. All 5 doors still show 0. The mailbox is still empty. What changed is the man answering. He knows now what the question isn't asking. So here's what you do with this. 3 steps. Number 1, calculate your liquid coverage before your next large decision, not after it. Add up only what you can spend without moving out of your home. Retirement accounts, savings, brokerage. Leave out the house. Leave out the car you drive every day because you're not selling it. Then pull your last 12 months of actual spending from statements, not from memory, because memory undercounts by a wide margin and always in the same direction. Divide the first by the second. That's your number of months. If it comes back under 12, then any repair or medical event above $10,000 is not an expense. It's a change to your retirement, and it deserves to be treated like one. Run it before the estimate is sitting on your bench, not after. Alvin ran it 11 days in. Number 2, split your net worth into 2 lines on a piece of paper. Housing wealth on one, usable wealth on the other. Most people have never seen these separated because every statement, every advisor summary, every net worth calculator on the internet adds them into one figure and hands you the total. And the total is the least useful number in the room. Seeing them separated is the entire lesson. Your house doesn't arrive through the mailbox, and it doesn't leave through it either. It sits outside the system you've been measuring with, which is exactly why the measurement kept telling you that you were fine. Number 3, before you pay off any remaining debt ahead of schedule, check whether the money doing the paying is the same money holding up your 12 months. This is the one that costs people the most, and it's the one that feels most like virtue while it's happening. If wiping out a balance drops your liquid coverage from 14 months to 5, you didn't remove risk. You traded a visible risk for an invisible one, and the invisible one doesn't send you a statement. It doesn't accrue interest you can point at. It shows up on a Sunday night when the thing you postponed finally fails, and by then the money that could have handled it is sitting inside a debt that no longer exists. Pay the debt when the months can absorb it, not before. Alvin still gets up before 6. The body still doesn't know how to do anything else. He still puts the coat on over the pajamas and steps into the unlaced boots, and he still walks the 12 steps down the driveway every morning under a roof that's 2 years newer than the rest of the house. He opens a mailbox. A grocery flyer, something from a dentist he's never been to. The mailbox is still empty. That's still good news. He earned it, and nothing about that has changed. It stopped being the only news he reads. An empty mailbox never said anything about what's inside the house. It only ever told him what stopped arriving. And for 30 years, he mistook that for an answer, the way most of us do, because it was the only answer anybody ever offered him. The question hasn't changed. His answer hasn't changed either. What changed is that it's no longer the last word on his life. It's one line on a page that now has 2. He walks the 12 steps back up the driveway. Same driveway, same man, different information. Almost everything you were taught to measure was chosen because it was easy to measure, not because it was what mattered. The retirements that work out are not the smartest ones. They're the ones that change rulers in time.